Inference Plus, story short number 35, Series B. Hey, I've been thinking, we should get a dog. George didn't even look up from his phone. He was at a critical juncture on level 173 of Planet Attack, and he wasn't going to pause it now to have yet another one-sided discussion about getting a dog. Sarah cocked her head and raised one eyebrow, a warning flag he caught out of the corner of his eye, but that was a problem for after level 173. What did I just say? George's mouth moved faster than the part of his brain that valued marital harmony. I don't know, weren't you listening? Oops, so much for Planet Attack. He was about to play Relationship Attack, and it wasn't going to be nearly as much fun. Reluctantly, he placed the phone face down on the charger. Sorry, I was preoccupied. Something about a dog? Yes, we should get one. Nope. Why? You like dogs. You had a dog growing up. You talk about him all the time. I don't like dogs. I liked one dog, Brownie. Other dogs suck. You used to like my dog, Sophie. In small doses. She died before we moved in together. The kids want a dog. George sighed. That pretty much settled it. Where is this dog that I must now assume has already been picked out? I am so glad you asked, Sarah quipped, an hour away in Raytown. Can you pick her up tomorrow since you're off work? I'm not picking up the dog. George pulled into the gravel drive of Midwest Animal Rescue at 3:45 the next afternoon. He'd been expecting a prison-like building made of concrete and wire, so he was glad the old farmhouse that served as the rescue was marked with a sign at the turnoff so he didn't miss it. He rolled his neck, which was stiff from the drive, placed the car keys in his jacket pocket, and stood uncertainly at the farmhouse door. The doorbell had been disconnected, and a hastily scrawled sign read, "Please do not knock." How precisely was anyone supposed to know he had arrived? The answer became clear when a frenzy of scratching, howling, barking, and skittering beat its way through the door. George hoped the one he had been sent to fetch wasn't the yappy one whose bark cut through the rest of the ruckus with the power of undiluted lie. A human voice above the din. "Door's unlocked, let yourself in." He turned the knob and pushed the door inward. Dogs, cats, and something that might have been a chinchilla flowed into the negative space. They all seemed friendly enough, wagging tails, big goofy dog smiles. "Quick, close the door!" He closed it. "Aaron?" George asked, loudly in order to be heard. "My wife, Sarah, sent me to pick up a dog." Aaron was wrestling a crumpled Doritos bag from the mouth of a standard poodle who seemed to have the upper hand. "Oh, yeah, the pug," she panted. "Take a seat. I'll go get her." A pug? Yuck. Pugs were noisy breathers, and they slobbered a lot. George sat. The Doritos bag was successfully pried away from the poodle. He was so distracted by the spectacle he failed to notice the fawn-colored loaf of fur that had clambered into his lap. "Never mind, looks like she found you." George regarded the dog's bulging eyes and lolling tongue. She was making a sound reminiscent of a clogged garbage disposable. It was unnerving. "Aaron, is she okay?" "Oh, yeah, that's just how pugs sound. It's totally normal." Okay. The pug sneezed. A globule of snot flew backwards onto her forehead. The lolling tongue shot up and back with the dexterity of a frog's, captured the globule, then pulled it back into the panting mouth. Contented smacking as the treat was consumed. His stomach turned. It was a gesture that was simultaneously impressive and disgusting. "Oh, wow. If you'll sign the papers, she's all yours. Your wife already venued the adoption fee, and you guys are all set. But she's not my... Have a great day." George and the pug drove in the car. She continued to wheeze, but he was starting to get used to it. He had flipped through the dog's adoption packet before they pulled out of the lot. It said her name was Puddles, which wasn't a name that inspired a lot of confidence in a new pet owner. He placed a precautionary beach towel over the leather passenger seat. The dog apparently did not know that her name was Puddles because she completely refused to answer to it. "I don't blame you, that name sucks. You deserve to be called something dignified, respectable. You're an older lady. You should be named something befitting of your station in life, like Ruth, Mrs. Ruth Simpson." The dog's ears sprung to attention. Ruth? Nothing. Mrs. Ruth Simpson? Wags. Okay, I guess you appreciate a little formality. I get that. George turned up the radio. Tub thumping by Chumbawamba. Barks, growls. Skip. California Uber Owls by the Dead Kennedys. Contented wheezing. I agree, Chumbawamba sold out. He'd missed lunch driving out to the end of the earth to get the dog and was starving. Up ahead, McDonald's. He took the off-ramp. Mrs. Ruth Simpson, at the sight of the Golden Arches, sat up at keen attention. I guess you know about the drive-thru, but do not get any ideas. I'm not feeding you people food. No way. This is strictly my lunch. Capiche? Mrs. Ruth Simpson had begun to chitter like an eager squirrel. He wasn't sure she'd gotten the message, but she would. He refused to be one of those weirdos who went around calling their dog a fur baby and worrying about its feelings. It was just a dog, and it will eat dog food at home. I'll take a number 2, no pickles, no onions, with a large Diet Dr. Pepper. He paused, looked at the hopeful face of Mrs. Ruth Simpson, then added, and a 4-piece chicken nugget. No sauce. He had limits. He looked at the dog, who was craning her head towards pickup window number 2. This was not her first McDonald's rodeo. What had her life been like before? Don't get any big ideas, he said. This is a one-time thing since it's your first day. Don't get used to it. Just because I picked you up doesn't mean you're my dog. I'm basically the Uber delivery driver, and you're an order for Chipotle. Got it? They ate in companionable silence, except for the pounding rhythms of the Dead Kennedys. No more Chumbawamba. George wasn't really in the mood, and Mrs. Ruth Simpson didn't like it. At home, George was pleased when Mrs. Ruth Simpson, he had begun to affectionately refer to as Meemaw because of her graying muzzle, a moniker of which she seemed to approve, both peed and pooped in the yard before scampering up the porch steps as though she'd done so 1,000 times before. I guess you figured out where you lived, George chuckled. Once inside, she took a self-guided tour of the rooms. After determining that the accommodations would be up to her standards, she returned to the living room, sat down with a thud at George's feet where they were planted on the floor before the recliner, and let out a gruff yap. George gestured to the dog bed Sarah and the kids had set up next to the fireplace. Nope, my chair. Your bed's over there. Take a hike. Yap! It's not happening. Yap, yap! You're not a baby. You're not a dog baby. You're a dog. You're not getting up on the furniture. Nice try. Yap, yap, yap! He rolled his eyes. Fine, one time, because it's your first day in a new house, but that's it. You are not my dog. Capiche? He lifted the pug onto his lap. She flopped onto her back and began to snore. It was an ungodly racket, but he didn't have the heart to move her. He kicked up the footrest on the recliner. Might as well take a nap, so he wouldn't disturb the dog, just this once. He scratched her belly. She grunted in approval. Mrs. Ruth Simpson was not his dog, but she wasn't the worst, he supposed.